There we go. That's a bit better, isn't it? Apologies for the delay, folks. We're just going to test that this is working. And then we're going to get going is the plan. There we go. That's working now. Let's get rocking and rolling, shall we? Because we've been waiting a bit long. Apologies for the delay there, everybody. But guys, gals, and the good and all beyond the binary, it is Wednesday night as well. It's now about 8:05, but it's just after 8 p.m. And welcome back once again to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, here once again to go through absolutely anything and everything we can talk about. And there's certainly some big things to talk about this week across the National Ice Hockey Division structure here in Britain. We focus on the National Division. That is our bread and butter. That is our home port. But of course, we need to make sure that we take a look across everything, whether it's the National Division, Division 1 or Division 2 in the north or in the south. I hope everybody's doing well. And boy, off the bat, have we got some news for folks before we this evening. There's lots of bits and pieces going on. There's even some news that's come out in the last couple of minutes that we'll touch on a little bit as we kind of go through bits. Thank you that you can hear me fine, because it certainly wasn't working a few minutes ago, Karen, and I really started to panic for a second there, because there's so much to talk about this week, and we will get to that in a minute. A couple of bits of housekeeping, though, as always, before we start. Hi, we're live on YouTube, and we're here every Wednesday night throughout the British hockey season. So if you are watching on YouTube, do us a favour, like the video, subscribe down there. Algorithms and things are great, but this, of course, isn't just about me talking at you guys for a long time. This is a conversation as much as it is anything else. And you've got the wonderful option of the chat function over there. So questions, comments, anything anybody wants to kind of throw in. Do, of course, remember that after the fact, you can leave a comment on the YouTube video, or if you want us to touch on your question and maybe you can't get to the live show, tweet us at BannersOTW. Always more than happy to pick things up as we go. But of course, if you are using any of these things, please remember the golden rule here at BOTW, and that is DBAD. Don't be a dick. Be respectful of other people's thoughts and feelings and bits and pieces as we go. Make sure as well, if you're watching live, to share the stream out on your social media of choice, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, Mastodon, and of course, everybody's favourite, the carrier pigeon. The other bit, of course, of housekeeping that we need to do is to make sure that you head over to bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. That is the website where I write about my writing, which is 11 years and 363 days old today. Our anniversary is in 2 days, where the website will turn 12 years. 12 years of me writing about this absolutely bonkers sport that we follow regularly. But, of course, new pieces pretty much every week throughout the season, including the one that came out today, which is a look back, an in-depth look back at the Bison's game from Sunday against the Raiders. That obviously comes in the context of kind of the weekend that they had against Swindon and Bristol. And, of course, we're all very happy in Basingstoke because Sunday went pretty much as well as it could do. Admittedly, one team probably had a bit of a better Sunday than Basingstoke. However, we, of course, will get to that in a bit, but make sure if you haven't checked out bannersonthewall.wordpress.com that you do. But lots of writing about the Bison player, Cummings player, Goings, game write-ups and stuff, as well as our hockey stories series, long content, long form, in-depth pieces about a variety of things. We go back into the 19th century up to the present day. We take on all kinds of topics, players, officials we've spoken to, and of course the most recent piece that came out a couple of weeks ago, the content question, about making content about this sport that we love. So, admittedly, we'll just touch on it very, very briefly, just because, of course, it has come out in the last couple of minutes, is that finally, it's been rumoured for a very long time, but James Galazzi of the Bees, he played for the Bracknell Bees, played for the Hornets in the past as well, has announced that he will retire from hockey at the end of the 2022-23 season. The word has gone up on the Bees website just now, just picking up the website link here. Everybody's always told me when the right time comes to retire, you'll know it, and that time is now. I'm into my 40th year, and trying to keep up has been getting harder as the body's been aching more. Bodies plural there, which is interesting. How many bodies does James Galazzi have? I'm extremely grateful for the career I've had. It's probably been more fortunate than I deserved, and I'm even more grateful to start and have been able to finish with this hockey club. You always think you'll go on forever, even if you know that's not true. But now is the right time to go out on my terms. Recently, I've been finding it increasingly more difficult to commit the time needed for hockey and wanted more and more to dedicate my time to my family and to life. So whilst this isn't the easiest decision, it's the right one at the right time. I won't go through the entire thing, of course, but a man who hated by many off the ice, but obviously obviously very well respected across the league. Maybe not so much in Milton Keynes at times, but congratulations to Gaza on a superb career. He's obviously meant an awful lot to people at the Bees as a club. We wish him all the best for the next stage of for whatever comes next for him. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting, isn't it? I mean, blimey, do I feel old now that James Galacti is retiring, having sort of watched him play for the Hornets back in the day. However, let's get on to the big bit of news. And with all due respect to the National Division, which is kind of where we put a lot of our focus on this show, we're going to sidestep a little bit just on the National for now. Because, of course, there's been a few bits of news that have come out of the lower divisions of the NIHL recently. And poor Joe Scutts, our friend from NIHL Stats, copped the lot of it in the neck the other day. Because, of course, he had, as the statistician for the NIHL this year, Joe had finally been given his hands on a bunch of decisions around games that were still to be played in the calendar. Games have been awarded, points have been dished out. And what it means is, for better or for worse, we have a few things decided. One of those things is in North 1, which has meant that the Nottingham Lions have been docked 9 points for not fulfilling a few fixtures over the course of the year. They postponed a load due to the university games because they had players away. Points were awarded to the Lions for the cancelling of their game against Whitley Bay. Joe, still innocent, yeah. Joe is very much the messenger still. Whitley were not docked points. And then, of course, we've had points awarded in North 2 to both the Sheffield Titans and the Bradford Bulldogs, which, of course, knowing what we know, hasn't impacted, thankfully, on anything there. But the big ructions have been in South 2, where the awarding of a couple of games to the Bristol Pitbulls for games that weren't able to be played has meant that the Bristol Pitbulls have won the South 2 title by a point from the Guildford Phoenix. So the Phoenix just being pipped at the post and being beaten by admin, not by TKO. Unfortunately, really not on the ice as well. But the Bristol Pitbulls have been awarded the South 2 title as a result. So we do say congratulations to the guys over in Bristol, particularly Captain Ollie Schoen, who's come away with a league winners medal, top point scorer and top goal scorer in South 2 for this season. Now, there's obviously a lot of bits and pieces going on here, and it should be said that I did reach out to I've reached out into a couple of places because, of course, one of the big games that was spoken about in places was this game that didn't take place between the Bristol Pitbulls and the Peterborough Phantoms. Now, I did reach out to the Guildford Phoenix, to members of the Guildford Phoenix roster during the last couple of days. Certainly the ones I've spoken to, obviously not super chatty. They're obviously very, very disappointed. One member of the team that I spoke to was very much of the point that, sport is sport, and losses happen in sport. Certainly the one thing that they were not super pleased about was the fact that obviously Guildford had gone to Peterborough and lost in Peterborough, and Bristol's game against Peterborough was awarded to them. And that was the thing that was obviously not great for Guildford, but certainly in the terms of sport, they can accept the fact that they dropped points and that put them in a position where they could be pipped at the post in this manner. Bristol, the members of Bristol who I've spoken to, are obviously very, very happy. They've got their league title. And certainly the conversation I had with one member of the roster was the miles earned the smiles for Bristol, because a lot of that Bristol Pitbulls 2 side are guys that kind of went through the dark days when they were playing out of Oxford. A few of them played the one home game they had to play at Solihull at one stage, and so obviously it's not a great way to win it, but we can be happy for those people who've got that. What it means in South 2 is that the playoffs now are absolutely huge, because there's going to be a great amount of sort of speculation as to who's going to win it, and also now Guildford and Bristol, who potentially is a final encounter that waiting to happen here at Ali Pally with its brand new plexiglass. Obviously, the Haringey Huskies are going to want to ruin anybody's day, and whoever wins between Peterborough and Invicta are going to want to ruin everybody's day. But the potential of a Guildford versus Bristol playoff final to round out that South 2 season could be huge. However, and I know one of the big questions that's been asked for a bunch of bits and pieces has been to do with the EIHA's involvement in all of this. Now, I have spoken to people within the EIHA today, not just Joe Scutts in his official statistician role, it should be said. So what I have, because it isn't on their social media, but I have been given a copy of the press release that is due to go out. Whether this is the final format or not, I don't know. But I have been given the press release, which I'm just going to quickly bang through for everybody now, just because of. So this is the wording that's come from the EIHA. This is what this is what we're going to look at, because what it breaks down is all of those games that haven't been played and have just been awarded to kind of end the as we get towards the end of the campaign, and what has ended South 2. What we've of course ended up with is there is another game that's about to face off in about an hour and 45 minutes, because there's a couple of guys playing at 10 o'clock tonight. Brilliant. But either way, here's what we've got. Here's what I've been given today by the EIHA. A review has been conducted due to a number of games failing to be scheduled within the allotted season dates. There have been several factors influencing this, including the opening of new or refurbished venues, the ice time provision across a number of venues for ice hockey impacting both junior and senior hockey. Where a fixture has equal responsibility between the two teams or no direct responsibility by any team, the fixture has been awarded 0-0. Where a fixture not being played is either in part or wholly the responsibility of one team, a fixture has been forfeited in favour of the opposition team 5-0. The preference in all circumstances is where a team holds the majority of the responsibility for a fixture not being played, this will be awarded 5-0 in favour of the opposition, and only where there are no differentiating factors will a 0-0 be declared. Following a panel review, the following fixtures have been awarded as stated. So this is all from Division 1 down. NIHL 1 North. Nottingham Lions versus Whitley Warriors. 5-0 in favour of Nottingham due to original fixture being postponed by away team. NIHL 2 North. Nottingham Lions 2 versus Bradford Bulldogs. 5-0 in favour of Bradford due to no ice time being provided by the home team. Nottingham Lions 2 versus Sheffield Titans. 5-0 in favour of Sheffield due to no ice time being provided by home team. Bradford Bulldogs versus Sheffield Titans. It's 5-0 in favour of Bradford due to original fixture being postponed by the away team. So there we have 4 points going to Bradford and 2 points going to the Titans. In NIHL 2 South, Basingstoke Buffalo versus Cardiff Fire. 0-0 due to no direct responsibility for either team. Lee Valley Lions versus Bristol Pitbulls 2. 5-0 in favour of Bristol due to no ice time being provided by the home team. Lee Valley Lions versus Streatham Blackhawks is 5-0 in favour of Lee Valley due to away team declining a valid fixture date. So Streatham being penalised there for having there being a valid date and then it not being honoured there by the Blackhawks is the reasoning given here. Lee Valley Lions versus Chelmsford Warriors is 5-0 in favour of Chelmsford due to no ice time being provided by the home team. Lee Valley Lions versus Swindon Wildcats 2, 5-0 in favour of Swindon due to no ice time being provided by the home team. Solent Junior Devils versus Cardiff Fire is 5-0 in favour of Cardiff due to no ice time being provided by the home team and the home team cancelling a scheduled fixture. Peterborough Phantoms 2 versus Haringey Huskies 0-0 due to no direct responsibility for either team. Peterborough Phantoms 2 versus Bristol Pitbulls 5-0 in favour of Bristol due to no ice time being provided by the home team and the actions of the away team to complete the fixture. Now, having spoken to Bristol about this, Bristol were prepared to play this game on a Thursday night. There was apparently an ice time slot that was offered. And then the offer was pulled for a reason that we have not been able to get to the bottom of. I have reached out via contacts in Peterborough to people involved in the Peterborough Phantoms 2 side. I am yet to hear back as we're live here. If Peterborough do get back to me, because Peterborough obviously have a right to their reply in this as well. I've spoken to Bristol and I've spoken to Guildford, and I did reach out to make sure that I could hear from Peterborough about this, but they've not gotten back to me, unfortunately. But from my understanding, Bristol were prepared and had players ready to go for a Thursday night ice slot that they were told about in Peterborough that then did not go ahead. So Bristol, having originally postponed that game, the original game was postponed due to the fact that there was an outbreak of COVID, is my understanding, within that Bristol Pitbulls roster. You then end up with the game not being able to be rearranged, there being a date and a time that it could have been done. Bristol said they could go, and Peterborough were unable to do so. So Peterborough have therefore been handed the loss in that one. So this goes on because there's a bit more here. So some teams have chosen to complete fixtures midweek. Hi there to Karen from Telford in the NIHL to allow schedules to be completed. In the 2023-24 season, it will be considered whether this should be made a requirement rather than the current opt-in position to ensure that all games are completed as per the league structures in place in circumstances that lead to an inability to play a fixture within the weekend games that are considered mandatory. This position would also support the operations of the WNIHL and junior leagues, where any changes in scheduling have a significant impact. So certainly on that one, one of the big concerns was that the teams that are kind of the senior teams in the NIHL will have kind of more sway over the ice as a result, which will obviously impact on things like juniors being able to play and the WNIHL, whether it's Elite, Premier or Division 1. And actually what they wanted to make sure was that the senior men's teams weren't able to effectively take the mickey and just kind of like end up shuffling around and causing mayhem for everybody else. Now, there's one last bit of this, of course, because there's a couple of fixtures here that have not been mentioned, which relates to our friends, the Nottingham Lions. So I'll get this last bit here. In addition to the above, the following fixtures had completed a panel review in January. Hold your horses. So this is all from NIHL 1 North. The Nottingham Lions versus Widnes Wild, Solihull Barons versus the Nottingham Lions, and the Blackburn Hawks versus the Nottingham Lions. They're all given, as we knew, they'd all been given as 5-0 to the opposition. So Widnes got a 5-0 win, Solihull got a 5-0 win, and Blackburn got a 5-0 win. The Nottingham Lions have been deducted 3 points for failure to complete each of those fixtures. So that's a 9-point deduction for the Lions off the back of those games being awarded against them. Nottingham were also fined for each fixture and teams were awarded costs. All teams were informed of the outcome in January. However, at the request of the Nottingham Lions, an independent review of the decision and the decision-making process upheld the original panel decision and confirms that the outcomes were in line with the rules of competition. He stuck it in the chat, so I'm going to say this out loud as well for people listening afterwards, that Joe Scott from NIHL Stats obviously published all of these bits and pieces last night as he updated the fixtures and bits and pieces. And just reading what Joe has put here verbatim. For context, I was just given the score. I was given just the scores. I was not given the reasoning for each decision. Joe, as the statistician, had no part in any decisions. So anybody who's been giving Joe any mouthful of abuse, off your high horse, don't be a numpty. All right, nothing to do with Joe. But that is the end of that rather long piece that we got there regarding a bunch of those games. So to kind of throw in a few bits and pieces about this, obviously there's a lot of very happy people in Bristol tonight, and there's a lot of very upset people in Guildford, and that is understandable for obvious reasons. Now, titles should be decided on the ice. Now, obviously, in these situations where there is this problem happening, some decision kind of has to be made. Now, interestingly, of course, we have the fact that Telford are playing. Telford 2 are being made to play this evening because it was a case of my understanding is that there was a valid ice time offered and they had to fulfill it, or they would end up being judged a forfeit against them. So they are having to play now, at Ice Sheffield at 10 p.m. It was originally scheduled for 9:30, but this game against the Sutton Sting is now scheduled for 10 o'clock, which Telford, as a side who are challenging for the title, are going to want to have to take on. Whether it's NIHL 2 having to play in the midweek and what your thoughts on that are, there is a very big game in North 2 coming up this Saturday between the Hull Jets and the Telford Tigers that the Tigers need to win. And ultimately, a loss tonight for the Tigers, massive, is a hammer blow in terms of being able to to win back-to-back North 2 titles. One of them was a player from a team affected that I sadly had to report. And that's very, very sad to hear. So players giving Joe a mouthful really, really deserve to. My suggestion, Joe, would be that you report that to the governing body, because them abusing people, abusing the folk, just helping out in such a way is not appropriate. So certainly the thing I think that confuses me, obviously, like I say, I've reached from in the perspective of the South 2 situation here. I've reached out to Peterborough and I'm yet to hear back, so I'm not going to comment too much on that one. I'm reporting what I'm able to report on that one, and that is that. The situation in North 1, for me, is much more problematic here. because why Nottingham have been docked points and Whitley haven't is the thing that confuses me here. Now, the thing that there was no announcement from the EIHA, from the NIHL management committee when Whitley had announced that they were changing who they were playing on the 19th of Feb. When they were supposed to be in Nottingham, they announced that they changed everything and they were going to play Billingham. Now, circumstances obviously kind of took over there. The EIHA chose not to make a statement. Nobody from the league kind of made a statement. The only people who made a statement were Nottingham saying, we didn't agree to this. What's going on? Now, Nottingham have kind of ended up sort of taking this in good grace, probably because of what has happened in terms of the situation happening with them. But there's a real issue here, I think, in terms of optics of the IHA, because what they've ended up doing is a team that has, on purpose, not fulfilled a fixture, has not been docked points. Nottingham, who were, from my understanding, told that they had to play those fixtures, chose not to because they said that they couldn't because players were missing, and didn't do it, have been docked points. Now, the points deductions and the awarding of costs and the 5-0 win, these are all things that are established in the rules of competition. So it isn't the EIHA that have kind of chucked stuff out and made that part of it up. These bits are kind of readily established. But the application here is definitely an issue, and something that I had in my conversations with people from the EIHA today is how was Whitley's just dumping of their game in Nottingham not allowed, effectively so that they could get a payday against Billingham and they could all go and watch Newcastle lose in the Carabao Cup final. How is that fine? But Nottingham, what they did wasn't fine, and they get 9-point deduction and costs awarded against them. Now, there is a real optics problem there for the EIHA, and they have copped a lot of flack as an organisation from this today. The situation has not been managed particularly well. Obviously, there was a lot of games there in South 2 from Lee Valley that were kind of postponed, and they've obviously had the issue of Lee Valley closing, moving to Cambridge, and bits and pieces like that. And with all due respect, in some ways, it's helped a little bit that Lee Valley are not massively league contenders, albeit there is a game against Bristol that was awarded there. But you would assume, and it's not, obviously, you don't know 100%, but the assumption will have been that Bristol will have quite handily won that game. And 5-0 is almost the best result that Lee Valley could have got out of that. But that game against Peterborough is probably going to wrangle a little bit for folk in Guildford for quite some time. But that's kind of where that situation is. So the EIHA feel that they've applied their processes as fairly as possible. I don't think that North 1 situation is good at all. I think they've really, really kicked themselves in the teeth with this one. Because for me, that doesn't look like appropriate application across the board. One team's been docked points for choosing not... They say that they've chosen not to fulfill a fixture. Well, that's what Whitley did. And that's not I have no axe to grind with Whitley as an organisation, and I understand why, given the circumstances, they will have wanted to swap those games around. But Whitley should be docked points here. They should be docked points, and they haven't been. And I think the understanding here for a lot of us is, why have they not been? And I will keep asking that. The only thing I can get from it is that the fixture change must have been sanctioned somewhere by someone. And that does not feel like an appropriate kind of continuation of the process here. I think that's something that we kind of need to really, really wonder about. And I will keep asking the questions, as I usually do. My intention, like a lot of other people today, is I have said that I want somebody from the EIHA to sit down and have a chat with me on the record. The initial response to that has been relatively favourable. It will be a case of getting a date for that done. And I have to confess, it might not be till after the end of the season, just due to timings for people, because there's obviously quite a bit going on in hockey at the moment. And if we're going to do this, I don't want it to be a slapdash thing. Let's do it properly. But we'll see what happens on that front. But certainly my initial reachings out have been positive in terms of the fact that someone, it seems like that they are likely very keen, not necessarily keen, but they are prepared to come and sit down with me about it. And I will take that as it comes. We will operate that in good grace, in good faith. Right, questions, comments. What do people think about all that? Because like I say, there's definitely some bits in there that are definitely not very good. We do offer, though, our congratulations to Bristol and our commiserations to Guildford about the way that has ended. That is not great at all. But the Bristol Pitbulls are the champions of South too. They are we have champions now in all the leagues but one, and we wait to see what happens tonight at 10 p.m. out of Ice Sheffield. And you know, if anybody's up there and fancies giving us some updates during the night, please do. Obviously, a very, very terrible, not a great situation there in the slightest. The boys from 4000 and Canton have also asked us for someone to speak to the IHA as well. I don't know whether they've managed to get anybody to speak to them today. I have spoken to people from the IHA today, and like I said, my initial offer for someone to sit down with me has been relatively positively received. So I will work on that as it goes. But like I say, when I get something, I will let you know on that front. But yeah, strange, not ideal in the slightest. And like I say, Joe, if a player from one of the affected teams has been abusive to you on social media, even in a direct message, I think you should report that to the relative folk at the IHA, man. Not appropriate in the slightest for a guy just doing his job. And if we remember, folks, for Joe, and people will say, Anthony, you're biased because Joe is a personal friend, and you're right. Joe is a personal friend, and I'm really, really proud to be a friend of Joe. But where we had nothing for the better part of 2.5 months, Joe rectified the issues that we had having up-to-date stats for the National Ice Hockey League across all 5 divisions in the space of 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks, for the most part. So the idea that somebody is being abusive to him doesn't just offend my sense of you've been mean to my friend. You've just, for someone who has actively, objectively helped our sport this season, and that is your response to them delivering a message that they were given and had no part in. Whoever that person is, I believe the Australian term would be, you're a manus. Like, what is wrong with you? How does this help the situation? I get you're angry and you want to lash out. Fine. But this is not how you do that, by attacking people who have nothing to do with it and have really, really helped the sport this year in this country. Head from backside. Come back to the light, my brother. At Tiger School, sorry, bumpy car. Thank you, Karen. Well, there you go. At Tiger 2 School. Tiger 2 Schools there. I think it's that, isn't it? Tiger. Let's just check that on. Is it Tigers 2? Yeah, sorry. At Tigers 2 Scores. So Tigers. So I'll put it in I believe it's Tiger. I'll put it in the chat here. Tigers 2 Scores on Twitter. That is the so there's the, I'll put it in the chat there. That is, if you want to keep tabs on what Telford do tonight, Sutton versus Telford at Ice Sheffield. Huge game that the Tigers need to win to keep in the hunt. Already done. I get the frustration, and being the guy who was the messenger made me liable for it, but it went too far. Yep, absolutely, mate. Not appropriate in the slightest. A little bit of real time justice on that one. Bit of water into the system there. And of course, the thing is, with our friends from A View from the Bridge not streaming tonight, we can kind of rock and roll for a little bit longer if we need to this evening. We won't go all the way till face-off time. Let's be completely honest, Joe really shouldn't have been put in that position by an organisation who employ full-time staff members anyway. 100%. I think certainly certainly I think the issue will have been, and certainly my issues from when I deal with the IHA, is that the people who do the comms are reliant on the people within the organisation to give them the message to put out, and I think it's very, very easy to kind of direct that. As Joe has dealt with here, the anger goes towards the people delivering the message rather than the people writing the message. And ultimately, somebody like Thomas Ritchie, who's the new EIHA comms person, is probably very dependent on the people above him giving him the information. Now, I've been lucky to be given a copy of something, and like I say, the final version that comes out might be different. It might be some bits might be in sort of different orders, but the message is the same. And ultimately, yeah, really, the IHA put out some bits and pieces today, stick raffles and bits and pieces of that, people like raising money for hockey in this country, which is great. What I've just read out at like 8 o'clock at night should have been out at 8 o'clock this morning. Should have been out at speed in time so that people knew what was going on. and that anything Joe put out was backed up by what the organisation said. He should not have. I mean, Tom there from the Wildcast has made a really good point, and he's in. And Joe has been put in an impossible position that he really shouldn't have been put in, all things considered. No blame on the comms people. The question is why the message wasn't put through to the comms people first rather than the volunteer who gets abused. Pass on that. And I think it was probably just to kind of let people get some sort of announcement out that something had happened and then explain the rationale later, which is how the IHA have operated. I know in the past, obviously, that if we think back to kind of November time last year with some of the bans that kind of happened, like the first Bobby Chamberlain ban, where they kind of said that he'd been suspended. And a few people, myself included, went to the IHA and said, you've got to explain the rationale here because you're getting yourselves into hot water and people just making up reasons why when you have the ability to explain the reasons why. If you hold the information and it's going to help the situation, you probably should release it, especially when you're in charge. And there is the and they've kind of sort of done this again. They've chucked a load of information out there, and we'll tell you later, which is how occasionally I might say something to my wife when I'm heading out the door to work in the morning, but that's not how we should run the governing body of the sport in the country, and that's pretty crackers. Either way, keep putting the questions in the comments in the chat section by all means, so keep chucking them over there. We'll keep touching on things as we go, but we kind of need to talk about some hockey that's actually been played over the last little while. Now, obviously, Sportle, for those of you who watched the last couple of weeks, Sportle's been causing me all manner of headaches, and trying to flip between things is not ideal. So what we're going to do, rather than me flick between every single piece of everything, what we're going to do is we're going to put up the National League table because, or at least put up the scores. Let's put up the scores in a second, really, really quickly, because we can do that. Because I've at least got notes and I can kind of talk through the games for the most part. So if you give me a moment here, I'm just going to click a few buttons, and of course, because the National Cup is separate, we'll talk about that on its own. Talk about that on its own merit. What's that thing there? There we go. That's better. So we can at least kind of talk through bits and pieces. So it isn't there, but of course we do need to talk about the fact that the National Cup final started, and it was probably one of the more shocking results of the season, all things considered. Peterborough winning by 6-0 at home against the Leeds Knights. Ralph Sesenes, Joe Gretton, Lucas Sladkowski, Tom Norton, Will Welton and Alish Padalek with the goals. The Knights shut out for the first time in nearly a year since the playoffs last year, which is pretty cracker, which is just a bizarre result when you think of how free scoring, free moving, how Leeds have managed to kind of overcome pretty much every obstacle over the course of this year, and then they end up getting hammered on the road in a place that they won 9-3, less than a couple of weeks ago, is bizarre. I mean, credit to Peterborough. They did what they needed to do, and they've put themselves in a really good position to coming into the second leg of that final this coming Friday. And yet, is it enough? Is it enough? Because Leeds have the ability to score. 9-3 Leeds won in Peterborough a couple of weeks ago. That's a 6-goal margin. They repeat that on Friday. The cup final goes to OT. If there's any team that can do it, it's probably the Leeds Knights. And I realise that Kev, who regularly watches these streams, is in chat. I can see he's written happy, happy, happy. Even Kev has probably got a little bubble of nerves in the bottom of his stomach. And if Leeds score first on Friday night, that bubble's just going to get a little bigger every time. And I'm not necessarily, this should be Peterborough's. If Peterborough blow this, then they deserve all the haranguing that they get. And of course, there has been some discussion about the fitness of Jordan Marr. Will Tyler Delabatouche have to play in the second leg of a cup final with a 6-0 lead? We'll have to find out. what a baptism! I mean, Abdullah Batush's obviously had a really, really big, really, really big impact on Peterborough in the last couple of games. But boy, oh boy. If you're watching, it's just another game, mate. Don't worry. The other result then, of course, from Friday night, a pretty comprehensive 7-2 win for the Swindon Wildcats against the Basingstoke Bison. The Cats 7-0 up at one point in this game. 4 goals on the night for Aaron Nell in this one. There were a goal in this one for Jack Peacock for Basingstoke, which obviously makes me happy because Jack Peacock is just really fun to watch. But yeah, not a fun game from a Bison perspective. This one. All things considered, this is the one game I will quickly pull up the game sheet for because I haven't got any of it written down. But as you can see, not just a natural hat-trick from Aaron Nell, 4 goals back-to-back before Marcel Balach got the Bison on the board. Balint Pakodzi, and then the first ever senior goal, or certainly a first ever Wildcats goal, first team goal for Dylan Lipsey, the number 14, back on the ice in Swindon for his dad. Jack Peacock then scoring for the Bison with apparently Jack Peacock and Russ Cowley scoring at the same time, which is really, really impressive, all things considered. But hey ho. But yeah, so either way, in terms of the rest of the national division, we'll just quickly bang through notes rather than banging through all of these, banging through all of the game sheets because it's just so clunky and been so problematic, and the fact it just won't go back to the original page. But we will at least pull up the scores so the scores are on screen whilst we talk about it. And good evening to Volio. Good evening to you. Good evening to you, Ben, and all the chaps at Drop the Puck. Of course, great to see you guys. Of course, congratulations to the guys to Volio and his crew. Of course, we're going to be doing the coverage of both Northern weekends and the National weekend in Coventry. So congrats to you guys. Like I said, give me Solent versus Streatham, please. Desperately want to be on the mic for that game. I'm going to keep talking about it because I've got to blow the. Sometimes you've got to blow the trumpet for yourself if you want to do these things. I'm going to put it in the open and manifest it. But definitely, congrats to these guys. If you don't check out their North One highlight show and you want to catch up with the league that maybe you don't get to see as much, do go and do that if nothing else. Either way, the rest of the National Division then from Saturday. Peterborough, well, they had another really, really good night. A 6-4 win for them over the Phantom. Phantoms with a 6-4 win over the Raiders. Talk about beating yourself. Oh, well done, Sportle. Yes. Yep. But yeah, so a good win there for Peterborough on back-to-back nights. A huge win, 6 goals, two nights in a row in this one. Peterborough were 2-0 up thanks to 2 goals from Lucas Sadkowski. Alex Roberts getting 1 back for the Raiders. The Raiders actually end up pulling ahead in this game. Blas Novak and Mateo Gomicic meant that the Raiders were 3-2 up with 40 minutes played. But then in the final period, it was all Peterborough again. Sadkowski with the hat-trick to tie the game. Nathan Pollard, Tom Norton, and a fourth from Sadkowski into the empty net. Late goal from Tom Relf takes a bit of shine off the result, but 6-4 to the Phantoms is the final score there. And then, if you wanted goals, well, Sheffield versus the Bees. Solway, not Solent. Yeah, definitely meant that. Although that being said, Solent versus Streatham is always a really good game. Actually, if you've never had the opportunity, watch it. But Solway versus Streatham, I want that too. But yes, Steel Dogs with the Steel Dogs against the Bees. Which was a pretty interesting game. 9-4 final score to the Steel Dogs in that one. The Bees actually ahead at the end of the first period. Dom Gabai and JJ Pitchley with the Bees goals. Alex Graham with the lone goal in the first for the Steel Dogs there. But then the Steel Dogs pull themselves in front. 2 goals from Jason Hewitt made it 3-2. Gabai ties the game at 3-3 heading into the third period, and the Bees they lead 4-3. Juha Lindgren with an important goal there, but ultimately the Steel Dogs decided that they had enough of this one. Tom Dermott, Vlad Volkanovs, 2 more from Alex Graham, Warren Tate and Lee Hayward all find the net to make it 9-4 at the end. And then we look a little bit at the the title picture, and we can see there at the bottom of the screen here. A big game for the Leeds Knights. They rebound from the night before and the shocking performance in Peterborough as they win the latest leg of the Nell Classico. Swindon ahead, they've had a pretty decent record against Knights this year, and they were 2-0 to the good at the end of the first, thanks to Edgars Bebris and Aaron Nell. But ultimately, the Knights find a way. Good teams find a way. Zach Brooks, Matt Hayward and Cole Shudrett in the second. Kieran Brown scoring early in the third and then firing into the empty net to round out that game, which then put the pressure a little bit on Milton Keynes. What would MK be able to do against Telford? And ultimately, it goes all the way. It goes all the way to when you go to admit Lucas Sapkowski is actually good. Then Anthony, well, he's had a good year, but he wasn't very good last year for Romford. He just wasn't. I think this is the thing. I can accept he's had a very, very good season. I think probably my problem is that I watch a lot of Lucas Sapkowski road hockey where they're kind of all locked into that into super Slava mode on the road. But Sapkowski didn't impress me last year. I'm not going to apologise for having an opinion that kind of sort of got borne out by it. He wasn't super impactful for Romford, a team that missed the playoffs. What about Solway? Oh, Solway versus Solent would be fun. That would be very fun. Ooh, Alex Murray and Struan Tonner. Ooh, I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. That would be very, very fun. Either way, back to what we were talking about, of course, which is Telford. Telford and Milton Keynes. It does end up going all the way to OT. Sam Talbot and Scott McKenzie cancel each other out. David Sarkanis puts MK ahead. Danny Rose ties it up at 2-2. And then former MK favourite, of course, Tom Carlin puts the Tigers in front in the third. Tim Wallace will tie the game on the power play. And then 37 seconds into the extra frame, Liam Stewart, with the all-important goal, kept the title for just a moment or two within the reach of the Lightning. And then, of course, from a personal perspective, a result that nearly got me told off by shouting during my wife. I was spending some time writing on Saturday evening because I've got an article that I need to finish for something external. But the Bison pick up a huge 4-3 win in Bristol against the Pitbulls. The Bison 3-1 to the good in this game in the first, and the Pitbulls actually managed to bring it all the way back to tie the game up by the end of the second. The third can't separate them, but Gail Lubwele with a huge, huge goal put the Bison on the brink of playoff qualification when it came to heading into Sunday. And then Sunday, well, fortunately, in a way, the results are kind of in order in the way Sportle has done it. But for those of you watching the stream live, I know some people just listen to the audio as they're kind of travelling along, but we can see it there. The Bees with the big win. One of the early face-offs. The Bees beat MK by a score of 5-3. Bees 2-0 up inside 15 minutes. Juha Lindgren and Will Stead with the goals for David Sarkanis got the Lightning onto the board. Dom Gabay making it 3-1, but Tim Wallace does pull one back to make it 3-2 by the end of the second period. Stuart Mogg made it 4-2 to the Bees in the third. Sarkanis got one back. The Lightning within one, but very shortly after that, Sarkanis goal, Dan Rose makes it 5-3, and the Lightning were out of ideas and out of luck, and it meant all eyes cast their way north. What we got. Looking at the next fixture there is the ridiculousness that was Basingstoke versus Romford. Now, we've gone in depth on bannersonthewall.wordpress.com if you want the big sort of write-up and looking at that. And ultimately, the short version of this is a team in a holding pattern that was short benched and depleted and didn't have anything to play for. Took on a team that was short benched, depleted, and wanted to send one of their popular players out on a high. And ultimately, I've said in the piece, but definitely go and read this. The Raiders fell victim to what was sometimes the story of the piece is not yours. It's not with you. The story is against you. Romford aren't a bad side, and they've got a lot of really good players in that team. But the Bison were not going to be denied on this night, and it was after what's been a really up and down year in Basingstoke. We got a really nice feel-good moment, and Alex Sanford got the send-off that he deserved. So all the best to Stampy on that one. But then the following result on that one is the one that's kind of kept it, certainly that made Basingstoke fans smile, and full-time came just towards the end of the game in Basingstoke as well, which was a 4-3 win for the Hull Seahawks against the Bristol Pitbulls, which meant the Bison qualified for the playoffs in that 7th spot. Bristol now need a mathematical miracle because they still can technically catch Telford, but it will take a lot for it to happen. Andre Themar put the Seahawks in front there, but Bristol were 3-1 up by the end of the first period. Callie Robertson, a first Pitbulls goal for Kane Russell, and Ed Bradley made it 3-1. Emil Svek found a goal in the second period, and then Owen Bruton, who's been arguably one of the breakout players of the season this year. But then with time running down inside the final 2 minutes. A goal from Emil Svek kills the game off. And it means that Bristol's chance of getting into the playoffs just gets that little bit smaller and smaller, and to the point where it's almost non-existent. The Pitbulls need things to go their way now, but Hull, well, the next time somebody wants any chips by us, I think we can probably sort you out there. Don't forget Sarkanis getting a penalty shot, only for Wallace to come out and tell him to sit down. Wallace steps up, loses the handle, and Smittle saves. Matty then immediately started chirping. I think Matt Smittle's earned that, all things considered. He can have that one for free, can Matty. Peterborough then get a fantastic weekend. 3 games in 3 nights, just like Basingstoke, although Peterborough win all of their games. A 4-1 win for them over the Sheffield Steel Dogs. Another goals for Lucas Sadkowski and Will Weldon getting the Phantoms 2-0 up before Lee Bonner got that lone goal from the Steel for the Steel Dogs. Weldon's second of the night makes it 3. Nathan Pollard makes it 4. And Peterborough head into this weekend with an awful lot of confidence. And then, we will pull up the game sheet for this particular one, because I think it probably needs it. So we can just scroll down very, very briefly, and we can find what turns out to be the championship winning goal, which comes late in the second period. 2-2 at the time. The Knights having come back from being 1-0 and 2-1 down goal there. But Kieran Brown, who probably should get league MVP again this year. All things considered. Kieran Brown, who, like I say, will be league MVP, gets the championship winning goal. The Knights with the 4-2 win, a hat-trick for Matt Hayward on the night into the bargain as well. And on the ice of last year's league champions, the Leeds Knights secure themselves the NIHL National Division title. And we can only say, I think it is probably incredibly well deserved. The Knights have been the best team that I have watched, whether it's with my own 2 eyes or on video across the entirety of this year. They have been superb, and they are justifiably champions. Given who they're playing this coming Saturday, I'm really interested to see what's happening with that, or what we're going to get. I'll give you 20-1 on Sam Gospel starting on the wing if they come back and win the cup final on Friday. Fitting that Kieran Brown scored the title-winning goal, really. Yeah, very, very much so. Of anybody who you could think of to do it, it was definitely him. Obviously, Sam Gospel has played a massive part there, but the captain has led very much from the front for Leeds. Can I say as well, it's Telford versus Bristol on the final night as well. It's going to take a lot for it to get to that point where that game will be necessary for that to be done. All things considered, Jamie. But obviously, we'll have a... Obviously, people will be keeping an eye on what happens this coming weekend. But either way, the National Division table and the mark is finally there. Leeds Knights, champions, 10 points clear of the MK Lightning with 4 games to go. They cannot be caught. But that race for second is now very, very much in the balance. The Lightning lead by 1 point over the Phantoms, 89 to 88. Sorry, 81 to 80. I'm trying to read things on a small screen. Why am I doing that? That was stupid. I've clicked the wrong button there. I flip between us here. 91 for the Knights, 81 for the Lightning, 80 for the Phantoms. We then know that we're definitely gonna get a 4th versus 5th playoff series between the Sheffield Steel Dogs and the Swindon Wildcats. Everybody is announcing the bits and pieces for that already. What a cracker of a series that is going to be. If I remember rightly, Sheffield have opted for the Saturday game at home, which is obviously an interesting choice, but if I remember what Tom Graham told me earlier today, Swindon have done better in the series in Sheffield in Swindon, so that will offer up some very interesting ramifications come the playoffs in a couple of weeks. The Raiders then are in 6th. Obviously, they and Basingstoke have now qualified off the back of the Raiders qualified a couple of weeks ago, but the Basingstoke Bison now have that queue by their name. They are in. The Raiders on 54, the Bison on 42. They, of course, wait to sort of see what happens in the machinations between MK and Peterborough. And then down there in 8th and 9th, as we scuttle the table down a bit there, so the Telford Tigers have 40 points from 52. Bristol have 33 from 52. So we can look here at this column that Joe very handily puts into the puts onto the table. Is the maximum points the Tigers need. I believe. Hey, I recognise that website. Definitely not yours. But yes, ultimately, Bristol need to run the table here, and they need Telford to lose out because Telford, I believe Telford hold. Off the top of my head, Joe, did Telford hold the tiebreaker over Bristol? I'm pretty certain they do. But either way, you can see there that the door for the Bristol Pitbulls to make the playoffs is incredibly, incredibly narrow to the point where they need something really, really big to go their way to get away with this. But either way, then as we've got Hull are in 10th. They have 28 from 53, and the Bees have 28 from 52 as the battle for the wooden spoon goes on. Friday night in Sheffield, Saturday in Swindon. Thank you, Tom. Oh, blimey. Yes. So definitely Sheffield doing better away from home. So fancy their chances down there. But yes, as things stand then, of course, in the playoffs for the National Division, it would be if it started today, Leeds would play Telford, MK would play Basingstoke, Peterborough, Raiders, Sheffield, Swindon, as we know. What we'll do though is time is sort of rapidly marching on, and we're getting towards the 9 o'clock point. We're getting towards the 9 o'clock point already. What we'll quickly do is we'll very, very quickly just pull up the fixture. We'll do kind of the fixtures for the leagues kind of as we go. No, Bristol would just need to win. Okay, that's fair enough. Thank you, Joe. We'll just quickly then get the fixtures up, and we'll do the fixtures on the leagues as we go, rather than kind of going away and coming back, just because obviously time is starting to march on a little bit, and we don't still want to be going when things face off in Sheffield. So what we've got then this week in the 3-2 Tigers currently goal difference is level. Bristol win would get them there. Okay, understood. Thank you very much, Joe. So then let's just quickly look at the fixtures for the upcoming week. We know the second leg of the National Cup finalists is coming Friday, 7:30 p.m. in Leeds between the Knights and the Phantoms. Lots of storylines going into this one. The biggest one being, have the Phantoms won by enough? You know, I think I saw Jamie in the chat say that first period in Leeds on Friday night is going to be huge. What it then leads into is towards the end of league action with the last couple of weekends of the season. But Saturday the 25th then, a couple of 6:30 p.m. face-offs. One in Basingstoke as the Bison take on the Knights. I'm really interested to see how that turns out. And then the Southwest, will it be red or will it be blue on Saturday evening, 6:30 p.m. between the Wildcats and the Bristol Pitbulls. The Pitbulls desperately needing a win. 7 p.m. face-off then at the Thunderdome between the MK Lightning and the Bees. And as well as a 7 p.m. face-off in Telford between the Tigers and the Raiders. The Tigers, of course, knowing that they need the win will kill Bristol's chances there. And a 7:30 p.m. face-off in Sheffield, the Steel Dogs versus the Phantoms. But then Sunday the 26th, obviously earlier face-offs there. 5 p.m. at the Hangar between the Bees and the Bristol Pitbulls. 5:15 face-offs in Leeds. They take on the Bison. It's a home and home weekend for those two sides. The Raiders take on Steel Dogs at the same time as Sapphire Ice and Leisure. 5:30 p.m. face-offs up in Hull at the world's most versatile arena. They host the MK Lightning, and the Peterborough Phantoms host the Telford Tigers. Which kind of takes us through everything we need to know in the National Division. So we'll say it. Let's ask the question now for people in the chat. Who wins the National Cup? Do Peterborough hold on? Do Leeds produce a miracle? What are we going to see come the end of Friday night? Who is going to be the team that lifts the National Cup when all is said and done? Just having a quick flick through as well, just in case there's any news, because the IHA still haven't put out the press release that they've given to me, which is interesting. South 2 quarterfinals haven't been updated yet. Still frantically sorting North 2 game sheets as you speak. Don't worry, Joe. I think I can work it out from the table on its own. Fortunately, it's relatively straightforward. Niall being a Hull fan, he reckons Peterborough are gonna hold on and are gonna win there. So Niall, the first to nail his colours to the mast there. So congratulations for being brave there, Niall. Well done on that one. What we'll do then, of course, let's then quickly head over to North 1. Because there's obviously games in there that we need to talk about. Obviously, we had a lot of discussion about the games that haven't been played, but there were games on Saturday. Just the two on Saturday. The top two sides of the league both recording pretty sizable wins. Billingham with a 7-0 walloping at home against the Solihull Barons, whereas league champions Solway put 10 on the board against the Sheffield Scimitars. Sunday, there's a lot of sort of moving around in the mid-table there, but Sheffield do get another point into the bargain. They managed to take Whitley to overtime before the Warriors eke out a 3-2 OT win. Solway, they put 6 past Solihull for a 6-1 win at Hobbsmoat Road against the Barons. Blackburn get another decent win. They win 6-3 at home against Widnes. D-side give Nottingham an absolute slapping, 11-2. The final score in D-side on Sunday. Which means if we have a quick look, and those points deductions mean that last playoff spot in North 1 is open again. The line's now on 5 points from 31 games. The Scimitars on 4 points from 31 games. So all the other teams, of course, have qualified. Solway, Billingham, Whitley, Solihull, Widnes, Deeside, and Blackburn are already in the playoffs. Billingham now, with all teams having played the same number of games, Billingham lead Whitley by a point in second spot, which means that if the playoffs started today in North 1, Solway would play Nottingham, Billingham, Blackburn, Whitley, Deeside, which I think would be a really decent series. But Solihull versus Widnes has the potential to be a real firecracker and steal the show, all things considered. We then look across to the weekend's worth of fixtures in North 1. A really early face-off. Is that one correct, Joe? I don't know whether that one's been changed, but a 1 p.m. face-off up in Dumfries between Solway and Deeside. Although given the distance that Deeside have to travel for that one, they're probably very grateful of a 1 p.m. face-off. The only other game in the division on Saturday is a 7 p.m. face-off on Merseyside between Widnes and Solihull. And then a pretty full docket on all things considered on Sunday. 5:15 p.m. face-off in North Wales. Deeside host Blackburn. 5:10 face-off at Sheffield. Sheffield for the Scimitars against the Barons, knowing that they need a point in the last game of the season there to have a chance of the playoffs. Whitley take on Solway at 5 p.m. up at Hill Heads. Interesting to see what the Sharks do on that one. And the Nottingham Lions finish out their season against the Billingham Stars, 7:15 p.m. I believe, of course, that should be being live streamed. And of course, we can see all of those games that have been awarded as 5-0s and the like in that one. Leeds to come back, says Jamie. Jamie thinks that there's something in the offing. In that one, interesting. A brave man who's to make that prediction, Jamie. All things considered, so well done on you for being brave on that one, my man. Southbourne, then, of course, as we know, is slowly heading towards its conclusion. Interesting there that we do have a 0-0 game there that hasn't been done, and thanks to Joe, of course, for marking the games that have been marked as the 5-0s against Streatham in that one. So in terms of last weekend in South 1, Slough with a 3-2 win over Solent, which is pretty good for Slough, given they're wanting to kind of cement that third place in the league table. Streatham with a walloping 8-0 win as they picked up the league trophy on Saturday on the High Road. Was 1 p.m. originally, now 7 p.m. will change shortly. Thank you, Joe. So less good for Deeside. But yeah, Streatham pick up the league title after their 8-0 win against Oxford, so congratulations to them on that one. They then followed up the next night by walloping Invicta by 11 goals to 2. Streatham are not taking their foot off the gas. They want as many trophies as they can get, having lost out on the Southern Cup by the fact that people can't count to 4. Romford condemn MK to yet another defeat. 8-2, the Junior Raiders win at the Thunderdome. But Oxford get a really, really solid 5-1 win at home against Slough this last Sunday. What we do head into this weekend, though, a couple of the remaining league fixtures. Romford versus Solent is Saturday at 5:15. Streatham versus MK is Saturday at 5:30. I can only imagine the sort of hammering that Streatham are prepared to hand out. But then this weekend, the big games in South 1 are the Southern Cup final. Invicta and Chelmsford, they meet Saturday down in Kent. 5:15 p.m. face-off over in Gillingham, and then 6 p.m. at the Riverside to finish off that one. The next, what is now the second piece of South One silverware will be handed out by the end of this weekend. And a team that you may not have expected to be picking up a piece of silverware, given how dominant Streatham have been, someone's getting a trophy. Will it be Chelmsford? Will the Bartletts fire their way to glory, or will Invicta manage to pick up the trophy? Will Lazchek be the one to do it? Will they be back? Will some of those great Invicta names that they've got there manage to pull them through? Time will tell. But we'll just quickly pull up the South 1 table just to make sure that we've looked at it. Obviously, not that many games left. Everything is locked in as far as we're aware, because all the games that are left, nobody can kind of go anywhere. So what it means from the playoffs is Streatham, who finished the top, will take on MK in 8th. Second place Solent will take on Oxford. Slough in 3rd take on Romford. Invicta versus Chelmsford. So not only do they get the cup final against each other, they will go to battle. In the playoffs as well. What a couple of weeks that's going to be a Dynamos and a Chieftains fan. Well, did anyone see the Petr Cech article on the BBC website today? I'm aware of it. I haven't looked at it because I've been too busy trying to chase people around for bits and pieces to do with everything that's happened in South 2, Jamie. But if you want to stick the link in the chat, then by all means do. Anyway, South 1 done, into North 2, and we know that after an absolutely monumental comeback, Altrincham 5-1 down on Saturday evening in Sheffield against the Sutton Sting. They win in overtime, and that locks up the final playoff spot for the Altrincham Aces. For those of you not aware, of course, North 2 does not have playoff quarter-finals. They only go straight to the weekend, which is being held in Widnes this year. The top 4 qualify, and those top 4 are now locked in thanks to that win for the Aces. Elsewhere on Saturday, Hull kept up their push for the title with their 6-1 win against the Sheffield Titans. Bradford managed to squeeze by the Coventry Blaze by 5-4. Sunday then, the Aces did the double over the Sting with another overtime win. They win 4-3 this time over in Altrincham with their playoff spot already secure. But a solid weekend for the Aces, looking to build momentum. Coventry, having lost to Bradford on the Saturday, they win in the Skydome on Sunday by 5-4. So congratulations to them. And then Hull. Well, Hull do not the Nottingham Lions too. Absolutely no favours whatsoever. 19-0. I would love to see the game sheet for this one, just to see what the scoring was on this. Because I'm sure there's probably a few people who might not have necessarily been thinking to pick up some points. We know, of course, for fixtures, there's a game facing off. It obviously says 9:30 there. It's been moved as we've been talking to 10 p.m. tonight between the Sutton Sting and the Telford Tigers. Hull then play Telford this Saturday at 5:30, and the league season finishes off with the Tigers against the Titans on Sunday in Shropshire. What that means, though, is that the Tigers desperately need to get a win tonight. You would think Sutton would want to play spoiler as much as humanly possible and make that game on Saturday absolutely huge, but. Whatever's going to happen this coming Saturday, given the fact that they're going to edge to, given the fact that there's the cup final to come and the playoffs to come, Hull and Telford's story for this season is definitely not finished from being written. And as we can see from the table there, Altrincham qualify for the playoffs. The last team to make it, Coventry, can't catch them, and the thing there is done. What it means at the weekend in Widnes is that Hull would, if it was today, Hull would play Altrincham, Telford would play Sutton. Though, and in fact, this is what they will do, isn't it? Because there's no games left for Altrincham. I'll learn to count. That's really good. Well done, Anthony. Telford must win by 4 or more against Hull. Any other result, and Hull are champions. So thank you very much to Joe for the confirmation on that one. And then South 2. Because we know we'll have a quick scoot through at least the results from the last weekend to kind of at least confirm bits and pieces. Because games were played, even though as we know now what the end result is with regards to the title situation. So from Saturday, another win for the Solent Junior Devils, who out of nowhere suddenly picked up steam in the last bit of the season. They won 6-4 against Cardiff. Chelmsford though, couldn't quite get there in the end, but a 3-1 win for them on the Saturday against the Invicta Mustangs gave them a glimmer of hope. Basingstoke won 9-3 up in Lee Valley in a hastily rearranged game between those two sides. Oxford very much put to the sword by the Swindon Wildcats. 9-0 the Cats win at Oxpens. Then on Sunday, just the 2 games there, Swindon managed to get something back, get a 4-point weekend. They beat the Stretton Blackhawks by 6-4, and Bristol, well, they end up finishing their regular season campaign on a high 9-0. They beat the Chelmsford Warriors by, and then of course all the stuff that we talked about at the beginning of the stream means that we pull up the table, and it is confirmed with the games having been awarded. As we discussed earlier, the Bristol Pitbulls are the champions of NIHL South 2. The Wilkinson Conference goes to the Southwest as they pip the Guildford Phoenix by a point at the end of the season. Haringey finished 3rd, and in terms of the rest of the playoff teams, Peterborough, Invicta, Swindon, Streatham, and Cardiff make their way into the playoffs. Chelmsford, Oxford, Solent leap over Basingstoke by virtue of the head-to-head on that one. So Basingstoke finished 12th. Lee Valley finish bottom. So the playoffs in that one, as we can, I don't know whether Joe's been updating that as we've been chatting, but as we can tell, Bristol play Cardiff, Guildford play Streatham, Haringey play Swindon, and Peterborough take on Invicta. Hit refresh. We will hit refresh, Joe. Let's do it live as we're talking. Hey, there we go. It's all in bits and pieces. Well done. There we go, Joe. Thank you very much. Haringey versus Swindon, I'm really interested to see. I think you'd have to look, certainly in the first 3 encounters there, Bristol, Guildford and Haringey would pretty much be nailed on favourites to make it through to the weekend. I'd put Peterborough over Invicta on that one. In terms of that 4th place one, but you do really feel for whoever has to face any of these 2 sides. But either way, you're looking down the barrel of a Guildford Haringey semi-final in the playoffs. And if I'm Guildford, there is only one thing I want, and that's to hammer whoever we get through Streatham, hammer the semi-final. Because if I'm Guildford, I want Bristol in that final. Because ultimately, to come that close and to sort of be denied the title on effectively a bit of admin would be, for me, if I'm Guildford, I want Bristol in that final, and I want the big showcase to be able to kind of knock this out of the park and have it done, and then sort of say, yeah, you can have that league title that you want on a technicality, but when we met on the ice, we were the better side. Haringey are going to want to go back, are going to want to make it, going to want to get past Swindon so that they can have their big showpiece event in their rink, and they are going to want to ruin everybody's day. In that sense, and it does unfortunately feel a little bit like Peterborough and Invicta. Well, you don't want to say that they're going to make up the numbers, but it looks like whoever wins that tie does have a bit of an uphill battle, considering that you would generally guess the top 3 here are going to make it through, and they have all 3 of them have been dominant at times across this season. Either way, we have made it through the entirety of all the games that are played over the last weekend of the National Ice Hockey League. We've looked at all the fixtures to come, and we've even talked about the generalised insanity of what happened across the games that were awarded. Questions, comments, anything anybody wants to chuck in the chat, please do so while I have a drink of water. We'll open the floor a little bit. Free any thoughts, any bits and pieces on anything. Yeah, Ali Pally as well, like I said, that storyline in South too. But yeah, what a week. What a week. Been a very busy day. Done a lot of reaching out to be able to try and get a handle on kind of what's happened in with bits and pieces. Just looking at some bits and just double checking the news. I know Guildford and Coventry were at 2-2. Just no other big news in the immediacy that I can see. But like I say, anything anybody else kind of wants to chuck into the chat. Oh, he's been teasing this for a while. He's been teasing it for a while, ladies and gentlemen. But there it is in the chat there from Joe Scutts of NIHL Stats. Big announcement, 6:30 p.m. this Friday. Let's do something massive. If you're not following our NIHL Stats, make sure you do. Aside from all the little tidbits of information that you get, he's given me a little teaser of what this project is that's coming. You're not going to want to miss out. Looking at 3 first-leg games to take place for the National League on the Good Friday. Yeah, of course, with the Southern... with playoff weekends certainly being held in MK MK are going to need to hold any game of theirs on the Friday. Obviously, Basingstoke, the Bison put out a piece about them qualifying for the playoffs, and if they played Leeds and if they played Leeds or Milton Keynes, that they would they'd be at home on the Sunday. If they play Peterborough, they will be at home on the Saturday. Obviously, they've had it communicated to them by the respective teams what's happening. I venture it's probably for the Knights it'll be to do with football. And with MK, the South One playoff weekend is of course in Milton Keynes over Easter weekend. It's on the Easter Sunday and the Bank Holiday Monday, which is pretty good. Also, like Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Kareem to any of our friends from Hockey Algeria and any of our Muslim friends who celebrate those kind of things. So hopefully have a good one on that one. Like I said, just double checking the news. Nothing massive else there kind of going. We've run a bit long tonight, but I think we're allowed to, given how much stuff has kind of happened. Like I say, it's just that sort of frantic thing of just double checking we haven't missed any news whilst we've been chatting. Just can't see. Doesn't look like we've got anything extra into the bargain. But of course, playoffs are kind of edging ever closer here in Britain. They've kicked off in Europe for the most part of the world. Trying to keep tabs on all of that is exhausting, as it usually is. Leeds' football who are at home on Sunday. MK of course we talked about. But yeah, so obviously lots of the NHL is edging closer and closer towards the Stanley Cup playoffs. Obviously there's a fair bit left to go in the NHL still, but European leagues are into their playoff cycles already. Switzerland's rolling, Germany's rolling. The Ice Liga in Austria and Hungary and stuff like that is rolling. And whatever happens in the KHL, I don't care. Ignoring the KHL this year, we don't deal with propaganda tools for war criminals. So knock yourself out on that one. Given that we're at 9:15, we've been running for a little bit. Thank you for the patience at the beginning when the mic went sideways as well. That was appreciated, everybody. But what I will say then is, given that we're at 9:15 now, we'll say last call. So anything else anybody wants to kind of chuck in, please do. Who would you want to play, Anthony? MK or Peterborough in the playoffs as a Bison fan? I want Peterborough because I think we've got a point to prove. MK is a tough one. I think purely just because I think we've got more of it. I think there's certainly, having chatted to a couple of the guys in base, that they think that they can take Peterborough in a playoff style game more than they can MK. I wonder about playing MK at the moment because they appear to be having a bit of a. They've obviously got a ton of ability and a ton of skill, but are the mentals there right now for MK? And I think there's a question there. If part of me wants to play MK as well, because I think they might be there for the taking more in a mental sense. Stylistically, I think Peterborough is a better matchup, but is MK's head in the game right now? I think is a real question. Of course, any MK players and MK fans will want to disagree with me on that, I'm sure. But and ultimately, from a Basingstoke perspective, what do you say? Because the Bison have been so inconsistent across this year that they're playing a side that has been much better than them. Whether it's MK or Peterborough, they've been better teams than Basingstoke across this season. Can't argue it. Irrespective of what I think of the respective styles that they play, can't argue this at all. Peterborough are 60 minutes from a trophy. And can I say MK have won the three games based up by a score of 22? Yeah, we didn't play very well. Didn't play well at all. That 7-0 game was one of the worst games of Bison hockey I've seen since the last season of the Elite League, when they were really bad. But we've seen over the last couple of weeks, Jamie, that maybe MK's head isn't quite there. Losing a game that they needed to win against the Bees is not a championship team. Leeds struggled. Leeds had a horrible Friday night, and look at the response. I want to see the response from MK this weekend. That's what I'll say on that one. But the Bison have to beat a better team that is better than them over the course of the season to make Coventry either way. So whether it's Leeds, The Bison fan of me, the heart rather than the head says, bring them on. Bring them all on. Doesn't matter. We're going to have to beat whoever we face anyway, whether they're better than us or not. So, the attrition, I think probably if I'm picking, I pick Peterborough. I think if I was forced to pick one, but I don't think it matters from a Bison perspective. Ashley Tate's going to have to coach out of his skin to get this one. Sean Norris is back this weekend. Is huge. I still think he should be out for longer. He should have got 10 rather than 6, but it'll be a huge boost for them on that one. Can't deny that. Let's have a, like I say, just double checking just to make sure we haven't had any other messages. That one. Like I say, doesn't appear to be any other big news. A lot of tickets gone for Friday for the game upcoming between Sheffield and Peterborough by the look of it. So good job on the Steel Dogs for getting people into the barn for that one. Blimey, Nottingham losing 4-1 to Dundee. That is, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Let's just double check the score on that one. See if have I read that right? Yep. Nottingham are losing 4-1 at home to Dundee. Oh goody. That's not going to have any bad effects in Nottingham whatsoever. Oh well, either way, I think given the fact it's now 9:20 and we've all got lives to lead, and there's a game about the face-off in 40 minutes in Sheffield. Because of course there is. But we will call it there. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for everything related to the Bison player. Cummings player, goings, match reports as well in running with the herd, as well as our ever popular hockey story series. Long form pieces letting you go in depth about all kinds of bits and pieces. We go back into the 19th century to the present day. We go behind the Iron Curtain. We go through wars. We go inside the minds and hearts of former and current players, officials, and all sorts as well. Please make sure you check all those bits and pieces out. Also on the website is the back catalogue of the old BOTW podcast. That's there, as well as Dice Hockey, which is our free to download tabletop game. Nice, simple, straightforward. You can play it with any bits and pieces you've got knocking around in your house. It's free to download, but if you do enjoy it, please do consider making a small donation to Parkinson's UK. My dad is a sufferer of Parkinson's. It sucks. It's a horrible disease, and if we could put some money towards research and getting a cure for that, that would be massively appreciated. But there's a bunch of stuff there for you to enjoy. Literally nearly 12 years worth of stuff over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. We have sat down to decide our Bison Player of the Year. We will have an announcement for you as soon as we can get together to kind of figure out who it is. Facebook.com/bannersonthewall. If you like getting bit and news and stuff to your Facebook feed, make sure you go over and like the page. Everything that goes on the website and a few extra bits as well will go on to there. Twitter is @bannersOTW. That's the best place to kind of keep tabs on what I'm doing in terms of my sort of rolling commentary about the world of ice hockey, as well as kind of keeping tabs on some of these little bits of news that I report as I go along. And of course, we're here live Wednesday night, 8 p.m. here on YouTube for the BOTW What's Current stream, the NIHL's first and as far as we're only live show that covers every single level of the NIHL structure. If you haven't already, please do the BOTW What's Current stream. Ooh, that's not good. Reconnecting? What's happened there? What has happened there? Hopefully it's connecting. Ooh. There we go. The reconnection's back. But yeah, so I'm not entirely sure. Hopefully it didn't have a complete wobble there. But either way, we're done. That's another week of it done. Another week of NIHL nonsense is put behind us. We can enjoy ourselves again. The Leeds Knights have won the National Division. Bristol have won South 2. Solway have won North 1. Streatham have won South 1. It means it is all eyes to North 2. The Hull Jets and the Telford Tigers 2. Who takes the last league crown? In about 35 or so minutes, we're going to find out who's taking a step closer to that before Saturday's massive, massive encounter. Someone isn't going to be, but I'll say it anyway. Be happy. And if you can't be happy, then please do be safe. As my friend Scotty Watts would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. For bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe, and so long till next time. And hopefully, eventually, the IHA will put out this press release they've sent me. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you next Wednesday night.